What's good, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Gifted Who's podcast. I know it's been a while since I've been here. Hello, how is the world doing? But we're here. The NBA playoffs is live. The play-in has officially been underway, and I'm joined here today by my esteemed colleague, also NBA ball knower and watcher and supporter of the Philadelphia 76ers, Derek. What is good with you, my man?
What's up, man? Good to be back. It's been a while for the both of us. Yeah, the play-in is underway. My Philadelphia 76ers just took on the play-in demons themselves, the Miami Heat, and somehow, some way, walked out of Wells Fargo with the W.
Yeah, that was a wild game. We watched it yesterday. I think it makes sense to go over the play-in before we get to our NBA awards. That segment is coming up soon. But yeah, wild game. Did not expect Nicholas Batum to have the game that he did. Did not expect the Nicholas Batum masterclass legacy game in which he was able to help will the 76ers to victory. We watched it live on playback, which is crazy. If you want to watch games live, that link will be below. But what was your perspective going through all of it internally as you screamed every fourth minute?
Shout out playback, man. Look, yes, there was some screaming. I apologize to you and the fellow viewers that had to endure that. Look, Nicholas Batum had the best game of basketball in his entire life, and I was not prepared for said game. So he was fantastic. It was an honor. I was gonna say a joy. It was an honor to watch it. This team so desperately needed a hero, and it came in the form of a 37-year-old Nick Batum, and it was the most perfect timing. Joel Embiid, I think, struggled early on. Matter of fact, the entire team struggled terribly in that first half. It was a hard watch. It was pain. It felt familiar. But I gotta say, man, it felt like a whole new team in the second half. Not only just in that game, post brickin' for chicken, but actually the fact that I had hope that this team was resilient enough, something that has not existed in Philadelphia 76ers history in the past 5 to 10 years, is resilience. This team stayed committed. It didn't just count itself out. It didn't roll over. It wasn't a horrendous L. It was a hard-fought W. Miami made some mistakes along the way, no doubt, but Philadelphia stayed in it. And as a fan, I was hyped to see that. But honestly, just for any NBA basketball fan, the fact that this team didn't immediately roll over, I think gives hope for the NBA playoffs, especially in the East, where we know it's kind of the same old story. The West is entertaining. It's got most of the stars. Every series is an absolute fight. The East, it feels like a Boston cakewalk, but we're looking for hope. We're looking for contenders within that's, not in Northeast Massachusetts. And Philadelphia might be one. It might be one.
Yeah, man, that was a wild game. And I got to be clear. So clear about this, man. What Nicholas Batum did, we're watching the game, and the entire first half, and really the entire first 3 quarters of the game, the 76ers did not know how to break the Miami Heat zone. There were so many moments where you're just seeing the Sixers kind of just out there passing the ball, free flowing. Tyrese Maxey has his head up, but isn't really looking to try to create advantages to beat said zone, where they were just kind of stuck in the mud. It was a very in the mud game. And a lot of that led to why the Heat were up in the game. Tobias Harris continues to show why he's really not great at basketball. You know what I'm saying? Big shout out to his personnel and his charisma in the locker room. I think that's great. But in terms of his actual play on the floor, I mean, the off-ball defense was bad. He couldn't post up the players for the Miami Heat. There was a lot going on. But I think for Batum, he really kept the team composed. He was hitting big shots out of the zone. But more importantly, the decision-making from him was very good. As a connective passer, he showed a lot of promise and value. And on top of all this, defensively, he was also locking up the big block shot on Tyler Hero down the stretch as well. I mean, he truly had, in all definition of the word, a masterclass that was able to hold water into the fourth quarter for Joel Embiid and Tyrese Maxey to get it going and close out the Miami Heat in a very tough, in the mud elimination game.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you said it there. The 20 points off the bench, amazing, super needed, incredible. But to me, it really was the defense. He took the assignment, I think, of every single Heat player on any given possession. You mentioned, obviously, the clutch block at the end, the fact that the coaches knew and scouted and knew what play was being drawn up, obviously, is a huge help. But Batum guarded Jimmy for multiple stretches of this game, guarded Hero multiple stretches of this game, even had switches on Bam just to buy some time. Like, he was all over, and regardless of what he was asked to do, he just did his job to the best of anyone's ability. It was amazing. And like you said, Maxey and B, the whole team really struggled with the zone. It drives me absolutely nuts. It's been this way for far too long. So I want to give credit to the Heat, obviously, for playing a great zone, but at times it looks more like bad offense rather than great defense, and that's what's really difficult. But again, this feels like a different Sixers team because they found a way to bend and break the zone and had success. Maxey, like you said, kind of got it going, especially in that late third, early fourth quarter. Embiid had 11 points, 11 of his 23 in the fourth. Honestly, it might have been the last 4 or 5 minutes is when he scored all those points. So it was the definition of a clutch win. It certainly wasn't pretty. In the mud is how you can describe any Sixers and Heat matchup, I think. Neither of these teams are pretty, really in the slightest. But I think that personifies both of the franchises well. And I don't know. I think it's hopeful. Obviously, the Heat aren't done yet. We heard the news of Jimmy Butler's knee at the time of this recording.
Brutal.
It looks like he's going to be out for a couple weeks. So the season isn't necessarily over if the Heat can still claim the 8th seed, and I think they have still a decent chance to do so, even with Chicago doing well against Atlanta. But it was tough, man, and I'm very happy on multiple fronts. Philadelphia was able to close that 7th seed. Yeah,
that was a fantastic game for us to watch again. We did watch it live on playback, so if you want to hear Derek complain about Tobias Harris existing on this team, definitely tap in, because there will be more of that in the first round versus New York. Because if you've seen the Tobias Harris averages versus New York this season, it's pretty brutal. But while we're speaking about clutch wins, let's also speak about terrible losses. And this is the other playing game that took place in the Western Conference. Golden State Warriors versus the Sacramento Kings. Now, Derek has spoke about his team. I'm not going to spend too much time speaking about my team because, frankly... Nah, man. Talk about your team. Oh, yeah? Okay. Well, since Derek said speak on your team, I'm going to try to speak on my team. It was bad. Klay Thompson was like 0 for 10. And I really doubted if I could see a worse game from him than how he played last year versus the Lakers. And he somehow followed up and said, hold my beer. I got you gifted. He had a pretty bad game. And it's not just 0 for 10 that speaks out. It's not just the shot selection that speaks out. It's the fact that Trey Lyles is burning you off of the dribble with 6 seconds left on the shot clock. It was pretty embarrassing work from him. And that was only met with Andrew Wiggins showing up to go 4 for 13 from the field as well with 12 points. Meaning, yes, Andrew Wiggins and Klay Thompson in a must-win elimination do-or-die game combined for 12 points. All 12 coming from Andrew Wiggins, who was also getting cooked defensively a little bit. So rough spot to be in. We saw Trayce Jackson-Davis only get 7 minutes for the majority of the game. We saw the Kings basically throw the kitchen sink at Steph on and off the ball, and the Kings just ran it up with them converting off of Golden State's turnovers, a bunch of finishing in transition, Sabonis getting his get back from a year ago in the playoffs and playing very, very well. And Golden State really got dominated thoroughly, and in every aspect they were outplayed, outcoached, all of it. And this team that has been a up and down game for the entire season showed once again why they've been an inconsistent team by going out in that fashion to the Kings. Derek, what was your perspective on that game.
Yeah. Look, we watched that as well in playback, and shout out Gold Blooded. Look, I've enjoyed participating with y'all throughout the season, and whether it was a win or loss, it was still a great time. I will say, shout out to the Kings first and foremost. It wasn't that
absolutely
the Warriors just gave the game away. The Kings earned the W. They do know how to play you guys well, so I don't think it was a cakewalk or that Sacramento was just from some fraudulent team. They were the 3rd seed last year, so they're a good squad. They were, had an injury bug, but their 2 stars still played. Keegan Murray was fantastic. Like, Mike Brown knows your system in and out. There's reasons why they were successful. As far as Golden State, I mean, you said it. I don't think it's a hyperbole to say Klay played the worst game of his career, and Andrew Wiggins wasn't that far behind. I mean, the 12 points was about as inconsequential as you could possibly get. Like you said, the defense was disappointing from him as well, when he's supposed to be probably second best, at least second best defender on the team, maybe first as far as perimeter. That can play starter minutes. He just wasn't good. Klay was just pitiful. He doesn't give you anything else if the shot's not there. We know defensively he's not the same guy, but he's not a swing passer. He's not a rebounder. There's a lot to be desired from Klay Thompson at this stage. So it's frustrating because we know what a great resume he has, what an impactful player he once was, but he just isn't that now. The Steve Kerr thing, that has been much discussed throughout the entire season. I have found myself defending Kerr more often than not, whether it be from, the members of Gold Blooded, from the ferocious fandom that exists on, Twitter or around the spheres for basketball.
Very ferocious.
Yeah, we know about them. But I think ultimately I have to look and say, look, Steve Kerr had the worst season as a coach for the Warriors this season. Personnel was not a terrific fit, but there were just too many mix and match pieces that never gelled. He waited far too long on Kuminga. We've discussed the Moses Moody minutes for the better part of 2 years. Steph Curry's usage and consistent minutes. The Klay Thompson trust despite bad play. I mean, the list goes on. He was in a tough spot, but could have done better. I think that's what I can say. Not an easy job, but still, there were things that were in control, and he let it away. I mean, he has the quote, came out today after the game, like 2 days after the game. We could have played bigger, I think is what he said. We could have used some size. We could have used some athleticism. Trace combined for 11 minutes. Kevon Looney played 9. So, I mean, look, yeah, it would have been nice to have some athletes out there, but the ones you kind of have were on your bench. So, I mean, you got to look at yourself a little bit. I get it. You can't just magically find a new center. But listen, I mean, you got to play who you got. And I think especially in a game like that, where it was kind of out of reach for a while, why not give Trace some run? Because Trace will be back next season, no doubt. Kevon Looney, we don't know what his role is going to be next year. He was out of the lineup for a good portion of the season. So yeah, just a lot that Kerr and the staff, I think, just couldn't really get a grip on this year. That was tough. And then obviously Steph Curry looked the most human he's looked in a non-injured season. And I think that, he's 36, man. He's
36, man.
It should happen. It should catch up to him, but it was a tough watch all around. So I feel for you. It was a hard fought season. And there's just a lot of questions left.
Yeah. Hard fought season. A lot of things went down. I'm going to be dissecting this team a lot more in the offseason where they belong. Right now, we have more pressing matters. But, as we said, Golden State did lose to the Kings. The Kings will advance to play the Pelicans, who also probably had the best playing game that we saw so far of any playing game this year. Pelicans-Lakers was a really wild atmosphere in game. We both came in saying that we expected the Lakers to pretty much win the game, but the Pelicans really gave it a run for their money. I literally remember the first quarter looking so bad. Zion looked completely out of it. He looked like he was going to have a very rough night. CJ McCollum was already shooting tour dates in the first quarter.
Yeah.
BI looked like he wasn't there. And it got to a point where you were like, listen, Willie Green's done a lot for this team. And then in the second half, they look like a completely different team down the stretch. BI isn't playing. We're still not sure if that's a health thing or he just wasn't good enough to play, because what was happening at the moment, that lineup with Zion, Alvarado, Trey Murphy, Herb Jones, and Nance was so productive down the stretch, and they were getting them back in the game. Zion literally finishes the game with 40 and 11, and that's with him exiting the game because of a unfortunate hamstring injury, I'm pretty sure. So they wind up losing, but what a game this was, Derek. What were your thoughts?
Yeah, it was a great game. I mean, I'll stand on business. I was saying Zion was disappointing throughout most of that first half. He had, I think, one really good run in the second quarter, had maybe like 12 or maybe 14 at halftime, but it just didn't really feel like he got a lot going. We know he's not the best defender in the world. It's not his strong suit, not yet. And we both said, like, we really feel like we need more out of Zion, especially with BI having a slow start. CJ, I mean, he was just putting up a stinker the whole way through it. Nothing looked good out of him, honestly, that game. I mean, we know LA has a frustrating defense at times, but it was disappointing. But then cut to the third quarter, and Zion catches fire. The team is confident. You're getting big shots from a couple end of the shot clock shots from Herb Jones. We know Trey Murphy and the rainbow three ball. But dude, it was a two-man show, to me anyway, in the fourth quarter, between Zion going tit for tat with the Lakers' big two and Jose Alvarado looking like one of the most poised starting point guards. And I want to put emphasis on starting because it's like he clearly stole the job from CJ.
Yeah.
To me in that game. Alvarado's a fantastic player. The reason he is not already a starter for the Pels or somewhere else is because he's 6 foot on a good day. If he was 3-4 inches taller,
it'd be
this man's a starter. Terrific defense, all world hustle, huge shots down the stretch, but his passing, man. The two-man game he had with Zion, but just being able to like spread the Lakers out, not be afraid of anyone that was in the middle, whether it was AD or somebody else, and just dime after dime, setting the Pels up for success. I mean, it was incredible. And yeah, you mentioned like the Zion injury was the most frustrating because we have said so many times we just need to see him stay healthy. And sometimes it felt like it was almost in his control. Maybe that's an unfair statement, but it's been discussed. The whole weight thing, the being in shape, conditioning being inconsistent, buy-in being inconsistent. Zion then goes and has the best game of his career and doesn't get to finish it because of the hamstring pull. And that sucks. That's really not fair because he was really putting it together and had the chance to get the Pels in for sure, hopefully be able to play a series, and we get to see how this team actually looks. But once again, we're stuck. We don't really get to see that, and it leaves so many more questions for a Pelicans team that's a lot of fun. I think is a really good roster. I think with a terrific head coach. And again, they're potentially looking at an offseason because the Kings are hot. And as we said before, the Pels are going to be without Zion for the last playing game. Yeah.
Very well said. Super unfortunate for Zion. I think he made a ton of strides during this regular season to be the most available. I'm pretty sure he played like 70 games for Zion. That's a godsend for him to play the majority of the season. And he was starting to play his best basketball towards the tail end. I'm very upset that he got injured because regardless of if he is able to return to action or not this season in the postseason, I really just want one offseason where 0% of it is Zion having to recover from anything. I want him to get to a point where he's able to actually consistently work out on his game, zero rehab, where he can just work to get better and get himself even into a much more better version of himself conditioning wise. And I feel like every time the injury guys just treat him with unfair acts. So tough to see. Hopefully he's able to bounce back, but also with this Pelicans team, you know, as you said, they're going to have a lot of questions to answer with BI's contract extension up in the air, him being pulled, and to me, rightfully so, down the stretch of that game, seeing how that pans out and how they close out their final elimination game as well. Even with their head coach, which I personally don't believe will be in trouble. People have brought up the idea of firing Coach Willie Green. So a lot of questions are going to be on the table for this team in their future moving forward. That playing game versus the Kings and the Pelicans is going to be a must-watch game for sure. Will it be the Brandon Ingram pay me revenge game, or will it be his final game in New Orleans? A lot is to come, Derek.
Yeah, I think that absolutely could be the tagline. I think the biggest question circling the Pels right now is BI, because you really couldn't tell if it was a minutes restriction thing, which, you know, we talk about Zion's health all the time. BI is not exactly the most available player. It seems that him and Zion take turns being injured, unfortunately. And on the other hand, BI felt like the odd man out when the Pelicans were making their run and coming back. He was the not a great fit. He was the, you know, where exactly does he fit in the lineup? Because you're keeping Alvarado on the floor for defense, for shots, for the passing, for the consistency. Zion's on an absolute tear. You need Nance for bodying, for some boards, for fighting. And then you got the other two wings that are on this team that are amazing. You got Trey Murphy and the Rainbow Ball, also great length, good defense. And Herb Jones, all defense player, also much better offensive player this year himself. So, like, you don't want to remove any one of those five guys. And then when the subs did have to happen, we saw CJ get back in. We saw Dyson Daniels get back in, all before BI. So it does raise a lot of questions. And yeah, you're 100% right. I mean, BI has a huge chance to affect his next contract with the play-in game against the Kings.
Yeah, man, it's going to be interesting to watch. I also think that whoever comes out of it is probably going to lose to OKC, which is now in a great chance to make it out the first round, sidebar, but that's kind of where we are, man. Playing is going to be interesting. I think for me, if you had to make me choose between the two playing games remaining, I believe that the Kings are probably going to go to the playoffs. I think the Kings might beat the Pelicans. I know that the Pelicans match up better with the Kings all year long, they have, but the biggest difference in that matchup the entire season has really been Zion. If Zion is not there, that's just a different team, and I don't know if it's enough to beat this Kings team, especially with how Keegan Murray just played versus us and how Fox and Sabonis have been performing as their two-man. I think there's just a bit more continuity with them than this current build of the Pelicans with no Zion. So I think I will lean Kings. And for Bulls versus Heat, I mean, love Heat culture, but man, no Jimmy Butler with Bam Adebayo and Tyler. They still have a great chance, but I think the Bulls might be favored there, man. I don't know, Derek.
Yeah, I mean, first, as far as the Heat and Bulls, I mean, the Bulls surprised me. I was kind of pulling from them against Atlanta. Nothing personal against AT. Yeah, nothing personal against ATL. I feel for Chicago, I guess. I feel for the struggle they've been going through. Kobe White, best game of his career. We didn't even talk. Really get a chance to talk about him. Yeah, scored 42. Really was the hero of that game. I do like Chicago's momentum. I think what I'm gonna bank on is a Bam Adebayo masterclass. Yes, I think that's kind of what I'm banking on. The Heat obviously have played without Jimmy before during the season. We know he kind of mails it in, and obviously he gets banged up throughout the year. So I don't think it'd be a crazy shock to me for the Heat to pull that out. But if Kobe, DeMar, Io, like any of those guys can replicate what they did against ATL, then sure, Chicago's got a date with the first round. Moving to what you said about Kings and Pels, I 100% wholeheartedly agree with everything you said about the Kings. The other X factor to me that I just don't see where the Pels have an answer for is Keon Ellis is a nightmare.
He's been different, yeah.
Like, the Lakers obviously had the Pels number for most of the season. We know why. What the Lakers don't have, that the Kings have in Keon Ellis is an absolute terror on ball. DJ, Jose, they're going to get harassed. This guy who is making just under $700,000 this year has been playing out of his mind for the entire second half of the season. And I think that's going to be a huge problem for them, on top of all the things you said about, Sabonis, Fox, Keegan, and the supporting cast.
Yeah, man. Hey, playing is going to be interesting. Playoffs officially begin on Saturday. So again, we'll be watching a lot of these games and keeping up with these things as we progress on further EPs during the playoffs. But yeah, man, playing madness is here. Playoffs are literally right around the corner. We're about to be there in a couple days. And with that, I think this is the perfect time to transition, Derek, to the meat and potatoes of our show today. NBA awards.